What's going on, FA Nation? Justin Fensterman here. And as we head to Championship Week, Week 17 of our fantasy football season, let's talk about some trendy players, shall we? Players trending up and others that are trending down when it comes to fantasy football production potential. Don't take that foot off the gas pedal. Let's finish the job. Let's win those titles. This is what it's all about. Here's the latest fantasy football stock watch report. First, for players trending up, Sony Michel. After Darrell Henderson came off the COVID list heading into Week 15, the Rams decided to give Michel 12 more carries than Henderson. In Week 16, the Rams again rolled with Michel, and by the time Henderson received a carry, he got hurt after it. As we await Henderson's fate for Week 17 and beyond, regardless of whether or not he's active, Michel, as the healthy running back of the two, should continue receiving the majority of the touches. Between the quad-strained COVID and now his knee injury, the Rams have to play it safe with Henderson. Michel has carried the ball 20 or more times in 3 of his last 4 games, and he's posted 2 games of at least 120 yards rushing during that span. He's run for no fewer than 4 yards per carry during that stretch as well. Up next, Ronald Jones. With fantasy football championships on the line in Week 17, Ronald Jones walks into an excellent matchup against the Jets. Tom Brady threw 30 passes in a blowout win against the Panthers in Week 16, and the Buccaneers should be able to do the same against the Jets. If Brady throws a few early touchdown passes, they could ride out Jones for the rest of the game. The Jets have allowed a league-high 22 touchdowns run in on them this season, and they've led up the 4th most rushing yards for the year. In games in which Jones has received 7+ carries, he's scored a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 outings. He's logging 4.4 yards on the ground this year per carry. The good news for Jones is after the Jets, he has another date with the Panthers, and his volume of carries should be safe. Up next on the rise, Tyler Boyd. The Bengals offense has been strong, and they've scored the 4th most points in the AFC. Joe Burrow has been on fire in recent weeks, completing over 73% of his passes in 3 of his last 5 contests. He's thrown 7 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions in his last 3 games. Boyd caught 2 of those touchdowns and has now scored in back-to-back weeks. Boyd has produced 85 receiving yards or more in 3 of his last 4 games. After having a very shaky middle of the season from a production standpoint, Boyd has proven that he can be trusted and has secured double figures in PPR leagues with 6 points per touchdown reception in 5 of his last 6 contests. Now for players trending down, Cordarrelle Patterson. Patterson hasn't been producing as many points over his last couple of matchups. This is a problem because Coach Smith said a few weeks ago that he's going to start managing the workload of some of the Falcons' veteran players, and it looks like he's following through with it. When it comes to Patterson's work in the ground game, after receiving 11 carries in Week 15, he was fed the rock 7 times in Week 16. Between the 2 games, he's secured 32 rushing yards collectively, and even though he's running a score in 2 of his last 3 games, he's run for 3.6 yards per carry or worse in his last 3 battles. Patterson has the Bills in Week 17, who aren't the easiest to run on and have surrendered the 3rd fewest receptions to running backs this year, and he's not really being utilized in the passing game as much. The Bills have only given up 5 scores to wide receivers this season. Up next, Devonta Freeman. Despite Freeman rushing for 4.2 yards per carry for the season, since Week 10 he's run for 3.7 yards per carry or worse, and the Ravens coaches are starting to realize that, and they're taking carries away from him. Freeman has received 6 carries in both of his last 2 matchups. He's inconsistently being utilized in the Ravens' passing attack as well. It's understandable that Baltimore was down big to Cincinnati and had to throw more, but the Packers game the week before was close and he was barely used. Latavius Murray received more carries than Freeman in Week 15 and 1 less carry than him in Week 16. The Rams are also very tough to run on. Final faller, Chase Claypool. Claypool has 1 touchdown reception all year, and we've seen him catch 4 passes or fewer in 6 of his last 8 games. He's receiving an inconsistent amount of targets, and last time out against the Browns, he caught 4 passes for 45 yards. That's it. Claypool normally receives 15.5% of the Steelers' target share, but he hasn't exceeded 14% in 3 of his last 5 battles. Both Najee Harris and Ray McCloud have received a bigger percentage of the team's targets than Claypool in the Steelers' last 2 games. Even James Washington is on Claypool's tail when it comes to targets lately. He produces 62 receiving yards per game, and Claypool has exceeded that number 1 time in his last 4 games. And that is another Fantasy Football Stock Watch Report, FA Nation. We're looking for volume. We're looking for targets. At this point, with all that we're dealing with when it comes to COVID and injuries as well, as running backs were crushed once again in Week 16, all we need is opportunity, and targets and volume in the run game will get us there. Let's all win, and good luck in your championship weeks.